What if I told you that there are four simple but super powerful interview tactics that almost nobody is talking about? Hey everyone, my name is Yari, and for the past 5 years, I have been obsessed with sales and communication, especially the art of selling yourself, which is exactly what an interview is all about. The techniques I've learned have helped me to land multiple six-figure job offers right out of college, win thousands of dollars in sales competitions, and over $300,000 in scholarship, all as a result of successful interviews. The interview stage holds a lot of weight in any application process, especially for competitive roles. And it can be so frustrating when you know you have the skills or the work ethic to succeed, but no one is giving you a chance. That's why I want to share with you a few tips that will give you the edge in your interview. And these are powerful tips that almost nobody is talking about. Okay, so tip number one is to make the interview personal. And let's be honest, the recruiter has probably done so many interviews, maybe even just that day. It's a repetitive process, often draining and even boring. But what this means is that there is an opportunity for you to stand out as the exciting and engaging candidate, the kind of person who people enjoy being around, and people who are liked get hired. So how do you show that you are that likable person? So here's an important thing to remember. People love to talk about themselves. If you can get the interviewer to talk and engage in a conversation unrelated to their structured set of questions, then they're going to walk away with a smile. They're just simply going to like you. And the best way to do this is by asking a few questions during, let's say, the first few minutes of the interview. It's what I like to call building rapport. If you're familiar with that term, it's often a sales technique. It's super helpful for breaking the ice and building a more personal connection with somebody. So here's a simple trick for coming up with questions to start building this rapport, getting that connection going. So start by looking for something in their office or their Zoom background, if it's an online interview, that you can reference. So a photo of their kids or their pets, a diploma, or a sports team logo. If it's on display, there's a good chance that they're going to enjoy talking about it. People especially love talking about their kids and pets. You could probably get a good rant out of somebody if you work off that. And if there's nothing like that, you can try something like, how's your week going? Any highlights? Any highlights is a key part of that because just how is your week going? Obviously, they're probably going to give you like a one-word answer, nothing to work from. But any highlights gets them going with something even more specific that you can then bounce off of and ask some follow-up questions. So there is some leeway for you to start with and just see where you can get the conversation flowing. I will admit some people are harder to talk to than others. You get your people who are those one-word answer people. They're cold or just all about business. And if you find someone like that, just read the room. But in most cases, you will find that, they're just normal people trying to enjoy the interview process too. So if you can get them talking, you can show some of your personality. They're going to end the interview thinking, wow, I really liked so-and-so. And they're going to want to hire you. Okay, so if you're finding these tips helpful so far, I will mention that I do have an opportunity for those of you who want to dive even deeper. So check out the link in the description because there you can schedule a free coffee chat with me where we can talk in even more detail about your specific situation, your question, and we can even make a preparation game plan so that you can absolutely crush your next interview. Okay, my second commonly missed tip for you, what I like to call the power move question. This is a question for the end of the interview once you've already answered about all of the questions that they have for you. It's a very bold and intimidating question, but it's powerful. Here's what I recommend you say. Given our conversation so far, are there any hesitations that you have about hiring me? Okay, I admit it. I felt super intimidated when I posed this question for the first time. I was thinking to myself, was the recruiter going to think I was weird for asking this? Were they going to roast me on the spot or even know how to respond? And of course, the recruiter did have a response to little nervous me, and she was a straight shooter. She told me, well, we are looking at some other candidates with more experience. And while it was hard to hear this, it was actually a blessing because then and there, I was able to address her doubt. I explained that while I'm new to the role, I'm a quick learner who consistently rises to the occasion. And then I gave her an example of this. And by doing this, I was able to put her hesitation at ease. And I guess it worked because I later got the job offer. And what I love about a question like this is that it not only puts you in a proactive position, but it also demonstrates confidence. You are essentially inviting feedback and showing that you are not afraid to handle constructive criticism. And employers appreciate this. They are looking for candidates who are open to improvement because it signals a growth mindset and also adaptability. And both of these are just such highly valued in any workplace. And so, would I have gotten this role if I never posed that question? I mean, honestly, I don't know, but my gut tells me likely not. Okay, so on to tip number 3. So, have you ever been in an interview where they ask you about an experience that you were just not so proud of, or if they ask you a question that you simply cannot think of an answer to? Like your mind just goes blank out of nowhere. This next tip is about strategically weaving through those situations. So, let's start with what to do if the recruiter brings up something that you are just not very proud of. Whether it's a low GPA, a disciplinary action, or even just asking what your weaknesses are. So, no matter what the situation is, never end on a bad note. But not only that, you want to always steer the conversation back towards your strengths. For example, if the interviewer were to ask you about, let's say, your low GPA, don't just acknowledge it and try to formulate an excuse. Here's an example of what you could say instead. Yes, my GPA was a 2.5, but where I really excel is in my extracurricular activities. Let me tell you about the time I led my debate team to a regional championship. See what happened there? You took something negative and pivoted the conversation to highlight a strength. Now, that strength is what they have occupying space in their minds. Big win for you. And that same tactic applies to when the recruiter asks you a question that you can just not find an answer to. And I've been there. A recruiter once asked me, "Can you tell me about a time where you had to deal with a difficult coworker?" And for some reason, I really should have prepared for that, but I didn't, and I just could not think of a response. Sure, I've worked with difficult people before, but my mind was drawing a blank. So after a few moments of thinking about it, and I realized, oh my gosh, I can't think of anything right now, instead of coming up empty-handed, what I told her is, I can't think of an experience that matches that exact situation right now, but what I'd love to share with you is a similar experience where I was working with a group on a marketing campaign, and we just could not agree on how to attack the marketing plan. Everyone was spitting out different ideas, and there was just so much conflict and disagreement in that moment. And then I went on to share that experience and, how we had to work through our differences, blah, 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 going to the details of that story. But the point is that once again, pivoting the conversation to talk about your strengths, and in this case, how I overcame a difficult situation. While I couldn't think of a difficult person in particular, the topic that I went off of was still very similar to that question. So if you run into a situation where they ask you an interview question and your mind goes blank, what you can do is think of something that matches a similar theme, at least as close as you can off the top of your head, and then tell them about that experience instead. Because at the end of the day, the goal of the interview is to learn more about you. So as long as you can share an experience that goes into detail about yourself, and hopefully it's with a similar theme of the initial question they asked you, then they're still going to be impressed with your answer. Maybe even more because of the way you could just think on your feet. That being said, I mean, it still does to answer the original question if you can. Sometimes all you might need is just a little extra time to think. Which actually leads me to our next tip, which is stalling tactfully. We've all had that moment in an interview where we just need an extra second to think, right? But instead of panicking, here are a few simple tricks to buy yourself some time. Number 1, simple, ask for clarification. You could say something like, "That's a really interesting question. Could you clarify what you mean by XYZ?" Even if you don't need the clarification, this will buy you a little more time to think as they reframe the question. And who knows, the added clarification could actually trigger your brain into coming up with a response. So definitely something I encourage utilizing. The second way you can stall strategically is by, and this sounds funny, taking a sip of water. I know, weird. But seriously, it works. Watch this. That's a really interesting question. Let me tell you about a time where blah, 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 blah. Okay, see? It looks kind of funny, but that actually bought you a few moments to gather your thoughts. And sometimes that is all you need. Finally, a third way to buy time is to simply pause. It really is okay to take a moment and say, "Thank you for that question. May I take a moment to think about my response?" Or to just take a few moments anyway. whatever you feel more comfortable with. And it's better to spend a few moments in that silent thinking than rushing into a response where you were tripping over your words. I think people overplay the awkwardness of silence. Like, silence can be okay. Just don't make it, of course, way too long to the point where they're like, are you still with me? I mean, don't do that. But a little bit of silence, that's okay. All right. The next tip is to network within the company. A great way to do this is by leveraging LinkedIn to find someone in a similar role to the one that you're applying for. So reach out and ask if they'd be open to a quick 10 to 15-minute chat about their experience with the company. And if they agree, this conversation can provide valuable insights that will give you an edge in the interview process. You can even ask for specific tips on how to succeed in the hiring process. And beyond that, building this connection can actually give you an advocate within the company, someone who might vouch for you or offer you additional guidance from the inside. I mean, that's super cool. And from my own experience, I have found that I don't even have to ask for them to, vouch for me because that would be kind of a weird feeling. They just offer to because a lot of times people just want to help you. And if you're on the phone with them and they like you, chances are they're going to try to see what they can do to help you move forward in your interview process. And if you haven't even gotten the interview yet, they're probably going to make it easier for you to actually get to that interview stage by either flagging your application or having them send you an email and then they'll tell whoever the hiring managers are. I've had all of those things happen to me. So networking within LinkedIn is a huge plus. And I'll also add that doing this will actually highlight you as a proactive and engaged candidate. And that's going to help you stand out even more from the competition. And you can also name drop whoever you spoke with during the interview, casually, of course, just to make you have that edge and make sure they know about it. All right, and there you have it. 4 tips that most people aren't talking about. Let me know if I'm missing anything. Any interview advice that you think is a game changer, just drop it in the comments. If you found this helpful, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to make sure that you don't miss my next video that is going to give even more insight into how to kill it in your interview.